The most powerful woman in a relationship is not necessarily the woman who gets the most attention. She isn't the woman who knows exactly how to make a man chase her, and she certainly isn't the woman who plays games to make someone afraid of losing her. She's the woman who knows that her life does not end if someone walks away. Because the moment you genuinely understand that, everything about the way you love begins to change. You stop begging for consistency. You stop over-explaining your feelings. You stop trying to convince someone that you're worth choosing. And you stop treating another person's uncertainty as a problem you have to solve. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Have you ever been in a situation where you could feel someone pulling away and instead of stepping back, you moved closer? You texted more, you asked more questions, you tried harder to be understanding, you became more available. You started analyzing every conversation. Maybe you thought, if I can just show him how much I care, he'll realize what he has. But here's the painful truth. Sometimes the harder you chase certainty, the more uncertain you become. And this is where many women misunderstand attraction. They think being valuable means being impossible to lose. But real value doesn't come from making someone afraid. It comes from knowing that you will not abandon yourself just to keep someone else. That's a completely different kind of power. Imagine two women. The first woman likes a man so much that she begins organizing her entire emotional world around him. If he texts, her mood improves. If he doesn't, she starts wondering what she did wrong. She changes her schedule constantly. She says yes when she wants to say no. She avoids difficult conversations because she's afraid he'll leave. The second woman likes him deeply too. She's excited when he calls. She enjoys their time together. She is affectionate. She communicates. But she also has a life. She has standards. She has boundaries. She can say, I don't like that. She can say, I need more consistency. And if those needs repeatedly aren't met, she doesn't threaten to leave. She simply recognizes reality. That second woman isn't playing hard to get. She's emotionally grounded. And there is a huge difference. Because healthy attraction isn't created by withholding love. It's strengthened by authenticity, confidence, independence, and mutual investment. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to pretend you don't care. You don't need to disappear for 3 days. You don't need to make him jealous. You don't need to create some elaborate strategy that makes him wonder whether you're interested. The goal isn't to become unavailable. The goal is to become secure enough to remain yourself while you are available. And that is much harder because being unavailable can be an act. Being secure requires internal work. It means you can say, I really like you without immediately thinking, and now I need you to like me back. It means you can express your feelings without handing someone complete control over your emotional state. It means you can love someone and still ask whether the relationship is actually good for you. That question is incredibly powerful because many people ask, does he love me? But a stronger question is, do I like the way I feel when I'm with him? Do you feel respected? Do you feel safe being honest? Do you feel considered? Do you feel like your needs matter? Do you feel that the relationship is moving forward? Or are you constantly waiting for the next sign that you're finally going to get what you've been asking for? Because sometimes you're so focused on being chosen that you forget to choose. And that's where everything changes. You are not simply waiting for someone to decide whether you're good enough. You're also deciding whether this person is right for you. Think about how different dating feels when you genuinely believe that. You walk into a conversation not thinking, how can I impress him? But let's see who this person actually is. You don't think, how do I make him want me? You think, is there mutual attraction here? You don't think, what should I say so he doesn't lose interest? You think, can I be myself around this person? That's confidence. And confidence is attractive not because it is a trick. It's attractive because it communicates emotional stability. It tells another person, I have a self. I have a life. I have values. I have opinions. I have things that matter to me. And I want you in my life, but I don't need to disappear into you. That's healthy interdependence. And here's the part most people don't realize. When you stop making someone responsible for your self-worth, you actually become more capable of intimacy. Because now you can love from choice rather than fear. Fear says, don't upset him. Choice says, I want to understand him. Fear says, say whatever keeps him here. Choice says, tell the truth and see whether we can handle it together. Fear says, what if he leaves? Choice says, if he leaves, I'll be hurt, but I'll survive. That last sentence is incredibly important. I'll be hurt, but I'll survive. Because walking away doesn't mean you don't care. Sometimes walking away means you care about yourself enough to stop participating in something that repeatedly hurts you. And that can be one of the most emotionally difficult decisions you'll ever make. Let's imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah has been seeing a man for several months. The chemistry is incredible. When they're together, she feels completely connected to him. But outside those moments, things are confusing. He disappears. He avoids conversations about commitment. He says he cares about her, but his actions don't consistently reflect it. Sarah keeps telling herself, maybe he's just scared. So she becomes more patient. She gives more. She asks for less. She tells herself that if she doesn't pressure him, eventually he'll become ready. Months pass, and Sarah is no longer asking whether the relationship is healthy. She's asking how long she needs to wait. That is the moment she needs to stop and ask herself a different question. What if his current behavior isn't a temporary phase? What if this is simply what he is capable of giving me right now? That doesn't make him a bad person. It doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means his capacity and her needs may not match. And that distinction matters because you can have feelings for someone who isn't capable of giving you the relationship you want. You can understand someone's fears and still decide that you don't want to live inside those fears with them. You can have compassion for someone's past without making their past your future. That's emotional maturity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop trying to rescue a relationship that both people aren't equally building. But here's where many women get caught. They think walking away is a strategy. They think, if I leave, maybe he'll realize what he's lost. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But if your entire reason for walking away is to make him chase you, you're still emotionally attached to his reaction. You're still giving him the power. True walking away sounds different. It says, I am not leaving because I want you to panic. I am leaving because this situation no longer aligns with what I need. That's freedom. And sometimes, ironically, that's exactly when someone recognizes your value. Not because you manipulated them, because your absence reveals something your constant availability was hiding. When someone knows you'll tolerate anything, they have little reason to confront the consequences of their behavior. But when you calmly establish a boundary, the relationship has to become more honest. You might say, I care about you, but I need consistency. If you're not in a place where you can offer that, I respect your choice, but I can't continue this way. Notice what's missing. There's no threat, No manipulation, no, you'll regret this. No attempt to make him jealous, just clarity. And clarity is incredibly attractive because it creates emotional honesty. Now, he may respond in different ways. He might step forward. He might finally communicate. He might realize that he doesn't want to lose the relationship, or he might walk away. And if he walks away, that doesn't mean your boundary failed. Your boundary worked. It gave you information. That's something I want you to remember in your relationships. A boundary isn't designed to control another person's behavior. It's designed to clarify your own. You cannot say, "You must text me every day." That's control. But you can say, "Consistent communication is important to me. And if we're looking for different things, I don't think we're compatible." That's self-respect. See the difference? One tries to control him, the other protects you. And this distinction will save you from so much unnecessary pain, because the woman who can walk away doesn't spend her energy trying to control whether a man stays. She pays attention to whether staying makes sense. That's the real power. And perhaps you've been waiting for someone to prove that you're worth fighting for. Maybe you've thought, if he really cared, he would chase me. But be careful. Chasing isn't always love. Some people chase because they don't want to lose control. Some chase because their ego is hurt. Some chase because they miss the attention. Some chase because suddenly your absence makes them uncomfortable. What matters isn't how intensely someone reacts to losing access to you. What matters is how consistently they treat you while they have access to you. That's the test. Anyone can become emotional when you're leaving. The deeper question is whether they were emotionally present while you were staying. And that's where you need to pay attention. Because the love you deserve should not require you to threaten departure before someone finally becomes attentive. You shouldn't have to reach the edge of the relationship to receive basic consideration. You shouldn't have to become distant before someone becomes affectionate. You shouldn't have to stop caring before someone starts showing that they care. Healthy love isn't built around fear of loss. It's built around appreciation of presence. And that is the kind of relationship you should be looking for. A relationship where someone doesn't value you because you're difficult to keep. They value you because they genuinely see you. They know what you bring. They respect who you are. They appreciate your presence, and they actively participate in building something with you. That's the difference between being feared as a loss and being cherished as a partner. And if you want to become the kind of woman who can walk away, start with something very simple. Stop asking, "How can I make him afraid to lose me?" Start asking, "What would I refuse to lose in myself just to keep him?" Your peace, your dignity, your friendships, your ambitions, your voice, your standards, your emotional health. Whatever the answer is, protect it. Because the greatest relationship you will ever have is not the one where someone is terrified of losing you. It's the one where you never have to lose yourself to be loved. And once you understand that, you begin to see something that changes the entire way you approach relationships. The woman who can walk away isn't powerful because she leaves easily. She's powerful because she knows what she is unwilling to sacrifice just to make someone stay. That's a very different kind of strength. Because there are women who leave at the first sign of discomfort. And that's not what we're talking about. Emotional maturity isn't about running whenever something gets difficult. Real relationships require patience, communication, forgiveness, and growth. The difference is that a confident woman knows the difference between a relationship going through a difficult season and a relationship that has become a permanent source of pain. She doesn't confuse struggle with incompatibility. But she also doesn't romanticize suffering. And this is where your standards matter. Imagine you're dating someone who occasionally has a difficult week. Maybe work is overwhelming. Maybe they're dealing with family problems. Maybe they're emotionally exhausted. A secure woman doesn't immediately say, "You're not giving me enough. I'm leaving." She communicates. She asks what's happening. She gives reasonable space. She looks for reciprocity. But imagine the same person repeatedly ignores your needs, dismisses your feelings, disappears whenever things become serious, and only becomes affectionate when they sense you pulling away. Now you're looking at a pattern. And patterns tell you much more than isolated moments. This is something I want you to remember. Don't build your entire opinion of a relationship around its best moments. Anyone can create a beautiful moment. The question is, what happens consistently? How does he behave when he's stressed? How does he respond when you disagree? What happens when you express a need? What happens when you say no? What happens when you stop making everything easy for him? Because you don't really know someone's character when everything is going their way. You learn much more when the relationship requires emotional responsibility. And here's one of the most important signs that a man understands your value. He doesn't only respond when you're about to leave. He responds when you communicate. That's a huge distinction. Suppose you tell him, "I've noticed we've been spending less quality time together, and it's starting to make me feel disconnected." A healthy response doesn't have to be perfect. He might feel defensive for a moment. He might need time to process. But ultimately, he becomes curious. He asks, "What would make you feel more connected?" He participates. He doesn't make you feel ridiculous for having needs. He doesn't tell you you're too demanding simply because you want basic consistency. And if you've ever been made to feel needy for asking for something completely reasonable, you know how confusing that can be. You start questioning yourself. Am I asking for too much? Maybe I should be more relaxed. Maybe I'm expecting too much. And suddenly you're negotiating against yourself. You're lowering the standard before the other person has even asked you to. That's dangerous because over time you can become so focused on being easy to love that you stop being honest about what you need to feel loved. And that's not intimacy. That's self-abandonment. The goal isn't to become the perfect woman who never asks for anything. The goal is to become a woman who can express her needs without shame and accept the information she receives in response. That's maturity. And pay close attention to this next idea because it can completely change how you interpret someone's behavior. When you have strong self-respect, you don't need every interaction to go your way. You can tolerate disappointment. You can hear no. You can experience uncertainty without immediately panicking. You can allow someone to have their own feelings. You can let a person disagree with you without assuming they're going to leave. That emotional stability creates something very important: space. Healthy love needs space, not emotional distance, space for two complete people to exist. You have your life, he has his life, and then you build a shared life. That's much healthier than two people trying to become one person because they're terrified of being alone. Because when you're terrified of being alone, you can tolerate things you wouldn't tolerate if you knew you could walk away. And that is why developing your own life is not just a lifestyle recommendation, it's relationship protection. Your friendships matter. Your goals matter. Your health matters. Your work matters. Your creativity matters. Your identity matters. Not because you need to keep yourself distracted from love, but because love should be part of your life, not the replacement for your life. Think about what happens when your entire emotional world depends on one person. Every text becomes significant. Every delay becomes a crisis. Every change in tone becomes something you need to investigate. You're no longer experiencing the relationship. You're monitoring it. And that's exhausting. You deserve to be able to enjoy someone without constantly measuring whether they're about to leave. And this brings us to something that many people misunderstand about attraction. You don't create desire by becoming emotionally unavailable. You create healthier attraction when you have emotional depth without emotional dependence. There's a difference between saying, I care about you deeply, and saying, without you, I don't know who I am. The first creates intimacy. The second creates pressure. Because when someone becomes responsible for your identity, your happiness, and your emotional stability, the relationship becomes incredibly heavy. You start needing reassurance constantly. Now, you need them to prove their feelings. Then they feel pressured. You sense their pressure. You become more anxious. You ask for more reassurance. They pull away. You chase harder. And suddenly you're trapped in a cycle neither person intentionally created. The way out is not another tactic. The way out is building security within yourself. You learn to soothe your own anxiety. You communicate rather than accuse. You ask for clarity rather than inventing stories. You allow someone to demonstrate who they are instead of constantly trying to extract reassurance from them. And perhaps most importantly, you become willing to accept the answer. That's the part people don't like, because sometimes clarity hurts. Maybe you ask someone, are you looking for a committed relationship? And they say, I'm not sure. You might be tempted to interpret that as a challenge. Maybe you'll convince them. Maybe if you're patient enough, attractive enough, supportive enough, they'll eventually decide. But what if you simply believe them? Not because they're bad, not because they don't like you, but because they're telling you what they're capable of offering right now. That's valuable information. You don't have to turn someone's uncertainty into your project. You can say, I really like you, but I'm looking for something different. And then you step back. That's walking away, not dramatically, not angrily, not as punishment, simply because your direction matters. And sometimes that decision is going to hurt. Let's be honest about that. There is nothing empowering about pretending you don't care. If you love someone, walking away can break your heart. You can cry, you can miss them, you can question yourself. You can have nights where you wonder whether you made the wrong decision. Strength doesn't mean you don't feel pain. Strength means pain doesn't make your values disappear. You can miss someone and still know they're not right for you. You can love someone and still know the relationship isn't healthy. You can wish things had been different and still accept what they are. That is emotional strength. And here's something beautiful that can happen when you develop that strength. You stop trying to convince people to see your value. You become much more observant. Instead of asking, how do I make him fall for me? You begin asking, how does he make me feel? Instead of obsessing over whether he likes you, you notice whether you actually like the version of yourself that appears around him. That's a profound question. Who do you become around this person? Do you become more confident, more honest, more playful, more alive? Or do you become anxious, quiet, insecure, obsessive, afraid? Because sometimes the relationship isn't revealing who he is, it's revealing who you're becoming. And that's worth paying attention to. A healthy relationship should challenge you to grow, but it shouldn't require you to constantly shrink. You should be able to speak. You should be able to disagree. You should be able to have boundaries. You should be able to say, that hurt me. And you should be able to hear, I understand. Not every conversation will be perfect, but there should be room for repair. Because one of the most underrated signs of a strong relationship is not the absence of conflict. It's the ability to repair after conflict. Maybe he says something insensitive. You tell him. He listens, he apologizes, he changes the behavior. That's meaningful. Because an apology without change is just another repetition waiting to happen. And this is where self-respect becomes practical. Self-respect isn't waking up every morning and telling yourself you're amazing. It's making decisions that communicate to your nervous system, I will protect you. It's saying no when something violates your values. It's leaving situations that repeatedly damage your emotional health. It's refusing to participate in relationships where you're constantly begging for the minimum. And sometimes self-respect means staying and working through something difficult. Sometimes it means leaving. The wisdom is knowing which one you're dealing with. And here's another sign of a woman who can walk away. She doesn't use silence to punish. She uses space to think. There's a difference. If you're ignoring someone because you want them to panic, that's manipulation. If you're taking time because you need to regulate your emotions before having a productive conversation, that's emotional maturity. The intention matters. You don't want to become someone who plays games. You want to become someone who doesn't need games. Imagine how freeing that is. You don't need to calculate how long to wait before replying. You don't need to post a photograph hoping he'll see it. You don't need to flirt with someone else to provoke jealousy. You don't need to pretend you're busier than you are. You don't need to manufacture mystery. You simply live your life. And if someone wants to be part of it, they show up. That simplicity is powerful because the healthiest relationships aren't built on confusion. They're built on clarity. And I know some of you listening have spent years believing that love has to be earned through performance. Maybe you learned early in life that being lovable meant being useful, being agreeable, being attractive, being easy, being accommodating, never complaining, never needing too much, never being difficult. But you are not a product that needs better marketing. You don't need to become more impressive to deserve consistency. You need compatibility. That's different. The right person isn't necessarily the person who thinks you're perfect. It's the person whose values and behavior allow both of you to be human. You can have a bad day. He can have a bad day. You can disagree. He can disagree. You can need reassurance sometimes. He can need reassurance sometimes. And neither of you has to earn your right to exist inside the relationship. That's what security looks like. And this is why the woman who can walk away often becomes more discerning, not more cynical. She doesn't say, men can't be trusted. She says, I'll trust behavior over promises. She doesn't say, I don't need anyone. She says, I want partnership, but I won't abandon myself for it. She doesn't say, I'll never fall in love again. She says, I'll love again, but I'll love with my eyes open. That is the kind of woman who creates a completely different relationship dynamic because she isn't entering love asking, how do I keep him? She's asking, can we build something together? And that question changes everything. So if you're currently in a relationship where you're afraid to express your needs because you're scared that he might leave, I want you to pause. Ask yourself what you're protecting. Are you protecting the relationship? Or are you protecting yourself from the pain of discovering that the relationship cannot give you what you need? Because those are not the same thing. Sometimes we stay because the truth feels more painful than the uncertainty, but uncertainty can become its own form of suffering. You spend months wondering, you analyze, you wait, you hope, you make excuses, and meanwhile, your life is happening, your time is happening, your emotional energy is happening. You deserve to spend that energy building a life that feels good, whether someone chooses to join you or not. And when you genuinely believe that, love becomes lighter. You don't become less loving. You become less afraid. And there is an enormous difference between loving someone and being afraid of losing them. Love says, I value you. Fear says, I need you to stay. Love gives, fear grasps, love communicates. fear manipulates. Love chooses, fear clings. And if you can learn to recognize the difference inside yourself, you'll begin making very different decisions. You may discover that the relationship you've been trying so hard to save doesn't actually need another strategy. It needs honesty. And sometimes honesty will bring two people closer. Sometimes it will reveal that they need to separate. But either way, honesty gives you your power back. Because now you're no longer living in fantasy, you're living in reality. And reality is where healthy love begins. And perhaps the deepest lesson in all of this is that walking away is not really about leaving someone else. It is about refusing to leave yourself. Because there are moments in relationships when you are tempted to compromise something important just to keep the connection alive. You tell yourself, it's only this one time. You overlook the disrespect. You accept another broken promise. You silence another need. You convince yourself that being understanding means having no limits. But eventually you wake up and realize that the relationship isn't the only thing you've been negotiating. You've been negotiating with your own self-respect. And that's where I want you to draw a line. Not a line designed to punish someone, a line designed to protect the woman you are becoming, because your standards aren't there to make you difficult to love. They're there to make it easier for you to recognize love when it arrives in a healthy form. Think about the difference between someone saying, I don't want to lose you, and someone behaving like losing you would actually matter. Those are two very different things. Words can be emotional. Actions are revealing. A man might tell you that you're special, that he cares about you, that he doesn't want anyone else. But what happens when you need him? What happens when you're vulnerable? What happens when you tell him something isn't working? What happens when you stop making excuses for him? What happens when you ask for consistency? Does he become more intentional? Does he listen? Does he make adjustments? Does he take responsibility? Because someone who genuinely values your place in their life doesn't simply fear losing access to you. They value the relationship enough to participate in maintaining it. And that's something you should never forget. You don't want to be the woman a man desperately chases after you leave. You want to be the woman he never takes for granted while you're there. That's a much higher standard. Because anyone can suddenly become attentive when consequences arrive. But real love shows up before the consequences. Real love notices. Real love asks questions. Real love remembers. Real love makes an effort without being threatened. And if you're constantly wondering what you need to do to make someone appreciate you, maybe the question isn't what you should do next. Maybe the question is whether appreciation is something this person naturally knows how to give. That's not something you can force. You can't teach someone to value you by giving them more of you. Sometimes giving more only teaches someone that you'll continue giving even when you're receiving very little. And I know that sounds harsh, but I want you to hear it with compassion. Because many women give too much, not because they're weak, but because they love deeply. They see potential. They see the good moments. They understand someone's wounds. They imagine what the relationship could become. And there's something beautiful about being able to see the best in someone. But there's also a danger. You can fall in love with potential while living with reality. You can love who someone could become and ignore who they consistently are. And eventually, reality asks you to make a decision. You don't need to hate someone to leave them. You don't need a dramatic betrayal. You don't need a villain. Sometimes two people simply want different things. Sometimes one person is ready and the other isn't. Sometimes the chemistry is real, but the compatibility isn't. Sometimes the relationship taught you exactly what you needed to learn. And sometimes the most respectful ending is to stop asking a relationship to become something it has repeatedly shown you it cannot be. That doesn't make your love meaningless. It makes your love honest. And if you can accept that, you'll stop measuring your worth by whether someone stays. Because someone's decision to leave is not a mathematical calculation of your value. People leave for thousands of reasons. Timing, fear, incompatibility, emotional limitations, different priorities, different dreams. Sometimes people simply aren't capable of giving what you need. That doesn't mean you're not enough. And this is one of the most important things I want you to remember when someone walks away. Don't automatically turn their decision into a verdict about you. You might be tempted to think, what did I lack? Was I not attractive enough? Was I too emotional? Did I say the wrong thing? Should I have been more relaxed? Maybe you could have done some things differently. We all can. But self-reflection is different from self-rejection. Self-reflection says, what can I learn? Self-rejection says, what's wrong with me? Choose the first, always, because the woman who can walk away doesn't believe she is perfect. She knows she is responsible for growth. She apologizes when she's wrong. She works on her communication. She learns from her mistakes. She becomes more emotionally intelligent. But she doesn't spend her life trying to become flawless enough that nobody will ever leave. That's impossible. You cannot control another person's choice. You can only control the way you show up, and that is enough. Now let's talk about something that can be uncomfortable. Sometimes you're not afraid that he will leave. You're afraid that if he leaves, nobody else will come. That's different. That's scarcity. And scarcity can make you stay in situations that don't deserve you. You tell yourself, maybe this is my only chance. Maybe I'll never find someone like him again. Maybe I should just accept this. But you don't know that. And more importantly, your life cannot be built around a prediction about the future. Your job is not to secure one particular person's presence at any cost. Your job is to create a life where you can say, I would love for the right person to share this with me, but I will not destroy this life waiting for someone to choose me. That's freedom. And strangely enough, when you stop treating love like a scarce resource, you become better at recognizing healthy love. You stop being dazzled by inconsistency. You stop confusing chemistry with compatibility. You stop interpreting anxiety as passion. You stop thinking that uncertainty means the connection is profound. Sometimes the person who gives you butterflies is simply activating your nervous system, and the person who gives you peace may initially feel less dramatic. That doesn't mean there's no attraction. It may mean there's less emotional chaos. Pay attention to that. Because healthy love isn't always loud. Sometimes it feels like being able to breathe. It feels like not having to decode every message. It feels like knowing where you stand. It feels like being able to ask a question without fearing punishment. It feels like someone whose actions don't constantly contradict their words. And if you've spent a long time in relationships where love was unpredictable, stability can initially feel unfamiliar. You might even mistake peace for boredom. But don't reject something healthy simply because your nervous system is accustomed to uncertainty. Give consistency a chance. Give respect a chance. Give emotional safety a chance. And here's where the idea of walking away becomes even more powerful. You don't walk away to make yourself valuable. You walk away because you already understand your value. That's the foundation. If you leave because you want him to chase you, you're still waiting for him to validate your decision. If you leave because you've realized the relationship no longer aligns with your values, your decision stands whether he chases or not. That is the difference between strategy and self-respect. And perhaps one day someone will recognize that about you. They'll realize that you aren't someone they can keep through empty promises. They'll realize that you have a heart, but you also have boundaries. That you can forgive, but you don't endlessly tolerate. that you can love deeply without losing your identity, that you can communicate your needs without manipulating, that you can stay through difficulty, but you won't stay indefinitely in disrespect. And when someone meets a woman like that, something changes. Not because she's playing a game, because the relationship has consequences. Her presence is valuable because she gives it freely. Her love means something because she isn't giving it away at the expense of herself. Her commitment is meaningful because it is chosen. And her leaving when necessary is not a threat. It's simply the natural consequence of being unwilling to live against her own values. So if you're wondering whether you have the strength to walk away, start smaller. You don't have to leave a relationship tomorrow. Start by telling the truth. Say what you need. Stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Stop saying yes when you mean no. Stop explaining away patterns that hurt you. Stop making someone else's lack of effort your personal improvement project. And then observe what happens when you become honest. What happens when you stop over-functioning? What happens when you stop doing both people's emotional work? You may discover that the relationship becomes healthier. Or you may discover that without your constant effort, there wasn't much holding it together. Either way, you learn something valuable. And information is power. You don't need to be afraid of discovering the truth. The truth may hurt, but confusion can hurt for years. So choose clarity, choose honesty, choose yourself. And I want to leave you with this. The woman who can walk away isn't the woman who doesn't love. She's the woman who understands that love without self-respect eventually becomes resentment. She knows that being chosen feels wonderful, but choosing herself is essential. She knows that someone else's desire cannot be the foundation of her identity. She knows that she can be soft without being weak. She can be loving without being desperate. She can be committed without being controlled. She can forgive without forgetting her standards. She can give someone another chance without giving them unlimited chances. And most importantly, she knows this. If you leave, I will grieve. I will miss you. I may even wish things had been different, but I will not abandon myself to keep you. That is strength, not the strength of becoming cold, the strength of remaining open-hearted while becoming clear-minded. So don't become the woman who makes a man afraid of losing her. Become the woman who knows that losing herself is something she will never accept. Build your life, protect your peace, develop your confidence, keep your friendships, pursue your dreams, speak honestly, love generously, and choose people who don't require you to shrink in order to stay connected to them. Because the right relationship won't ask you to constantly prove that you're worth keeping. It will make room for you. It will respect you, it will challenge you, it will support you, and it will be built by two people who aren't desperately holding on to each other, but consciously choosing each other. That's the relationship worth having. And if someone chooses to leave despite everything you offered with honesty and love, let them. Let the door close if it needs to close. Not because you don't care, because you do. You care enough about your future to stop negotiating with what keeps hurting you. You care enough about your heart to stop handing it to people who don't know how to hold it. And you care enough about yourself to understand that your life is not over when a relationship ends. Sometimes it's only beginning again. The goal was never to become impossible to lose. The goal was to become impossible for yourself to abandon. Because when you finally reach that place, you stop asking, how do I make him afraid to lose me? And you start asking something far more powerful. Does this relationship deserve the woman I have worked so hard to become? And when you can answer that question honestly, you no longer need games, chasing, manipulation, or fear. You have something better. You have choice. And that is where real confidence begins.